make sure that we get those votes in for the last several email agendas and also for the 629 call. We're still missing a few votes. Also, please keep in mind to continue working on your TRC evaluation forms on cmac.org. And please reach out to me if you have any issues. We are rapidly approaching the deadline. We do have a short window, but we do have a window nevertheless. Just so y'all know, as a TRC, we have decided to have the Vote on the Code conference the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of October. So this buys us a little bit extra time, but we have to have all of our TRC evaluations done no later than August 15th. So that gives us a little bit of a window to be able to do that, just as an FYI. Also, this is a little bit further in the future, but we will reconvene sometime in August and September to talk about the Vote on the Code conference, soliciting volunteers to help moderate rooms and fun stuff like that. And also just kind of do a feedback session because we want to clarify the review process, and I want y'all to really be influential in what that looks like. We may not change the process that much, but we definitely want to add clarity and develop a structure that would benefit, future TRC members and the future process. With that being said, I know we have a lot going on today, a lot of stuff to cover. Ellen, I'm going to make you host or co-host rather, to where you can share your screen if you want to with the IAQ CRs.
That would be great. Thank you.
And outside of that, looks like it's just TRC members on right now. Welcome back, Michelle. Glad to see you here. And yep, let me know if I can do anything. Amanda, it's all yours.
Okay, hi everyone, good afternoon. I just wanted to mention real quickly that Wednesday I'll be sending out another email agenda. I have 38 of Joe Laco's CRs that he'd written up. He's covering for multiple people. So I'll have, it's going to be a big one, but I'll have all those to send out, and then we can do a vote. And then I'll also send out the voting list for the July 1st email agenda. So as many of these CRs as we can get addressed by email, it will just help us in terms of, we only have a limited number of calls left, and as you can see, the call agendas are really packed. So anyone that has any non-substantial CRs that they think can be addressed by email, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions, if you want to prepare some summaries and add those to a future email agenda if you think that they don't need a call discussion, and we can work on them that way as well. Hopefully today we can get through these ventilation CRs and then some more. This agenda really has mostly substantive CRs to it, but we do have a lot of these. We have some on pH and later on after the ventilation ones, and then also some additional ones on UV and ozone. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and Ellen, I'll let you take the lead in terms of where we left off with these ventilation design and air quality ad hoc committee CRs, and then there's a handful of other ones as well that were ventilation related that we wanted to tackle at the same time. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I sent out an email just a few minutes ago with an updated version of this summary sheet that I'm going to be going through. And so I have it up on the screen here. Can you guys all see it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I'm not going to cover the things that we covered already. So if you look in the table of contents up in the titles, I put whether, the TSC voted yes or no and whether the TRC voted yes or no. And so we're just going to go through the ones that we haven't covered already. There are links in here So if you look at this one, the 412.314, there's a link right underneath it, and that'll take you to where it's going to appear in that overall big change request that's at the very end. But I'm not going to try to flip back and forth today because that took way too much time last time. And I think even with the links, it's going to take too long and we need to fly through these things. So if you want to look for yourself how it fits into the overall scheme, yeah, feel free to look. But I'm going to keep cruising through these pretty quickly. All right. So our first one is 412.313-0002. That one was withdrawn by the author, so we don't need to talk about it. The next one is 412.314-0002. And the title for that one is Air Filter Media, and the text is completely new. It's that the air filters used should be suitable for elevated humidity levels. So the TSC, when they read this, they said it doesn't provide any direction as to what qualifies, as being suitable. But I think it would still be good to have it in there, and then guidance can be provided in the annex. But it doesn't necessarily need to be in the code, but it does need to have something about how it needs to be suitable for air humidity levels, in my opinion. So what do you guys think?
This is Jason. I agree that the filter media should be it should be in there in the annex. It should be suitable for elevated humidity levels because you'll have operators trying to change out this filter media and just run to the Home Depot and grab the wrong thing and completely destroy the filter media or the filters, and then have issues with the air handling system.
Would this be something, this is Amanda, that could be, if the manufacturer has certain specifications for air filters that, I think there's generally, or, mention that the air filters need to be suitable for humidity and also per manufacturer's specification. So if they're specifying that you need to use a specific filter, that would be used.
Do they typically put that in their specifications?
It depends on the system. Sometimes, well, they'll have things like size and CFM and requirements and things like that. But there's a chance, depending on what system gets used, that it doesn't mention anything regarding humidity levels.
So if it doesn't say anything, does that mean that it wouldn't be suitable for high humidity? All right, so any other comments then? Are you guys ready to vote?
Just a question. This is Joe. So is there a chance that the entry as it's written would be in conflict with what a manufacturer recommends? So I guess out of ignorance, is it possible to have another system as part of the run that would account for the humidity? And or is there a risk of the manufacturer specifying a filter and the MAC or CMAC saying that that's not acceptable because it doesn't address humidity?
I don't know the answer. Anybody else on the call?
Is there another way to account for the humidity, I guess, would be the question.
It doesn't sound like anybody has an answer for you there, Joe.
I just don't want it to be too prescriptive, right? Where we're eliminating certain equipment if there's an alternative way to account for that. And I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if anybody on this call does.
Did the committee look at that?
I don't know if Harry's on the line. Harry, are you on the line? No, yeah, either he or Ralph were gonna try to be on the call, and Ralph just sent me an email right before the meeting saying he was not able to come. And so I don't know if Harry's gonna be able to join us or not, so I don't know.
But just an FYI, I've gotten a couple of emails. Apparently, we're having some sort of an issue with Zoom, and I'm not sure, and it's not letting other individuals in. I don't know what the particular problem is, but I don't want to try to address it, because then that's going to throw this call off and potentially, kind of mess up our whole progress today. So we are having that problem. So others may not be able to participate, unfortunately.
Okay, I think it's clear, at least if air filters are going to be used, that obviously you wouldn't want to use an air filter that is unsuitable for elevated humidity levels. So I think in a way this is kind of a no-brainer as far as, yeah, of course they should be suitable for elevated humidity levels. It's just a matter of, how do you actually determine that, and the devil's in the details, right? But I think the way that it's written, I think leaves it flexible enough that I don't think it would cause any problems, Joe, just the way I'm reading it.
Well, I just think you could use a filter that's not suitable for elevated humidity if you control the humidity in the process prior to the filter. And again, I don't know if that's even a reality.
Things cutting in and out.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out, Joe. I heard most of what you said there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just saying I'm not sure that the filter needs to be suitable for humidity if you can control the humidity prior to it reaching the filter. That's my only question. Are we too
part of the problem, Joe, is that in some or probably most of these systems, the filters first.
Okay, fair enough.
To protect the equipment. So the filter will usually be the first thing in line.
All right. So
I think I'm good with this as written. I think there's other areas of the MAC, more general requirements that, you have to operate equipment in accordance with manufacturer's specifications. So I think that we have those more general statements, so I don't think that it's necessary to add it here.
Oh, yeah, thanks for circling back on that, Amanda. Sorry, we got distracted and I meant to adjust that. Okay, so the text is okay the way it is then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I can't see how if the filter is at the beginning of the system that it wouldn't be humid air coming in, so.
All right, is anybody opposed to this change request? No, I will count that then as a unanimous yes. And we'll go on to the next one. So the next one is 42221-0001 about condensation prevention. This one has been a matter of some controversy. I was emailing back and forth with Miklos on this today. Where there's an added wording here about trying to prevent condensation of water. So this is in the design and construction phase, right? And adding in the words envelope of the pool room. So that just kind of gives better definition to the building surfaces. But then there's this added text about and within any wall, ceiling, glass, or floor structure under the coldest outdoor conditions. So you're trying to prevent condensation, on all of these surfaces and then within these walls, so you don't have structural damage. And a lot of the conversation had to do about glass, right? Because you can't add extra, insulation to your glass. You can certainly, in your design construction, you can design for double paned glass, but you can't add more insulation, to that double paned glass, or you're not gonna be able to see through it. So, the way it's written, as far as my recommendation, I was kind of ambivalent on this one. I think it's okay, probably the way it is, but the TSC definitely had an issue with, including glass areas on there. But you can have insulating windows, right? So I think that it's okay the way it's written, but I'm not certain. So want to open the floor to you guys and let me know what you think.
This is Amanda. If we're specifying wall, ceiling, or floor, I mean, do we have to specify glass at all? Because, the glass could be part of the wall, or the, ceiling, probably not the floor. But, and the other thing is, this is all for new construction. So it, would be something where it would be brought into, considered during the design phase. So if they were going to do, double panes or whatnot, this wouldn't be a modification after the fact. These requirements are for new construction.
Yeah, and one of the other questions I forgot to mention was about, okay, so, whoever's reviewing this plan, right? How do they know whether, it's going to be sufficient to, prevent condensation? Because it can be really, really hard to prevent condensation, obviously, in these facilities. And then, what's the criteria for accepting it or not, right? A particular insulation factor, or a particular, glass structure, glass window structure, how do you know whether it's good enough? So there is a lot of ambiguity there. But I think the intent of the committee was to point out that you don't want to be talking about the walls, right? You want to look at all of these surfaces and think about condensation on all of them. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think Ellen and the thing I think I kept mentioning was that what does the addition of the wording add to what's already there? I mean, does it really add anything?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I think that the authors thought that it did, right? So the committee, they must have seen a lot of instances where maybe just the walls were considered regarding vapor barrier and insulation, but the other surfaces were not considered. I'm guessing that that's why they felt that it was necessary to add that word in there, to make those words in there. But yeah, since they're not here, I can't confirm that.
But I think I would imagine that would end up being kind of an AHJ issue, whereas adding the wording, would that change any of that?
I mean, if floors and ceilings and walls and glass are usually considered part of the building envelope, I don't see why we would have to, if they are, I don't know the answer to that, I assume they would be, then I don't know why we would have to specify that in this section. We're already specifying the building envelope of the indoor aquatic facility.
Unless it's to point out specific things for the AHJ to look for. And if that's the case, then it would go back to my other concern, is that, like, what's acceptable? Are double paned, glass structures acceptable? Is it, what sort of vapor barriers and stuff are acceptable? What are not acceptable? Does it change depending on your climate on what's acceptable? Like, I think there's too much ambiguity for something like that. I think if you leave it more towards the MAC kind of or the annex recommendations on indoor aquatic facility design, and kind of leave it at that, I think that makes more sense. I don't know.
Yeah, even the way it's written though, even if you didn't add these extra words in here, it's still kind of ambiguous about how you would actually determine what's acceptable, right? So the existing wording is, you know, yes, you need to do your vapor retarder insulation arrangement to system preventing condensation on the inside. But it doesn't really tell you, okay, well, you know, what is acceptable there. So I think the existing wording has the same problem.
Yeah, I would agree. And there's no use in arguing about it because it's already there.
Yeah, this is Jason. I don't really think the added wording does anything for this.
So you think that people would already know that they need to consider the walls, the ceilings, and glass, and the floor?
Well, yeah, it already says inside. I don't know why we need to add envelope of the pool room. I mean, and then building surfaces. If we leave it at that, then yeah, it's all basically all surfaces. So, I mean, I don't think we need to go into the way it was written before just to discuss the changes. And I don't think the changes do anything for this.
This is Amanda, and there is a little bit of annex material on this under 42221, just specifically about paints that are suitable for use as vapor retarders. But, you know, again, this is probably things that are better located in the annex, both what would constitute adequate for the weather and also direction on how to evaluate it for both designers and for people reviewing plans.
Is the addition of the envelope of the pool room, is that necessary because the opening statement talks about the facility building and not necessarily the part of the building that houses the pool room or the pool? I think of like a fitness center or something, the way it's the aquatic facility building envelope construction would address the entirety of the building. But
So the
condensation?
MAC does define specifically indoor aquatic facility. It's a physical place that contains one or more aquatic venues and the surrounding bather and spectator stadium seating areas within a structure that meets the definition of a building per building code. It does not include equipment, chemical storage, or bather hygiene rooms or any other rooms with a direct opening to the aquatic facility, otherwise known as a natatorium. So it really is specifying just the pool room based on the use of that definition in that section, I think.
And I agree that that language adds nothing.
Okay, we ready to vote? Sounded like the general comments were against it, so I'm going to ask, is anybody for this change request? Okay, I'm going to take that as unanimous no, and we will go on. So the next one is 42221-0001. Now this one is a statement about weather data, and ASHRAE has a thing called the ASHRAE dehumidification weather data for the facility geographical location, and they're saying that should be used when you're doing your calculations for the ventilation. And so you take these values and you add it to the evaporation load from all your water surfaces and from your occupants when sizing your climate control equipment. So I don't know, for me, it sounds like it's a no-brainer, right? You know, that you need to consider here where if you're in Florida, if you're in Maine, it makes a difference. The TSC, they had a question about where it is in the code, but again, that everything's reorganized in that other one. That change request that's at the very bottom. And the question, of course, whether it belongs in this code or not. So I would recommend yes. I do have a comment here though. There is some repetition here. So if you look at 4625-0001, maybe I should split my screen here. And I want to look for the number again. 4625. So you can look at them both at the same time. 4625. We voted for this one already. And you can see that they're both very similar as far as the text that's done here. The one that we're currently voting on is actually a little bit longer than the one that we already voted on. Like the first sentence is exactly the same. And for the one that we're currently looking at, this shall be added to the evaporation load of all water surfaces and occupant, include spectators, swimmers, and non-swimmers on the deck, latent moisture when sizing the climate control equipment, and the parenthetical stuff is left out, and there's a little bit different wording for the one that we voted on already. So I don't know that we necessarily need to have the repetition in there, but I think the extra words are helpful to have in there.
Hey, this is Vince Hill at CDC. I got a question. I just did I wasn't familiar with ASHRAE dehumidification weather data, so I did a search for it, and I'm on the ASHRAE site. I actually don't see a product like that. I mean, so my first question is this a product that people have to purchase, or is this just readily available? And if it is a product, is that the right wording? Because I don't see this in their quote unquote bookstore. So just a couple clarification questions.
I'm just taking a note. Where is that data? I think it might be in the regular ASHRAE standard. Anybody have that handy?
I looked it up last time we were talking. It's like I think it's like a database that you can download. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, so maybe that's not referenced very well. So maybe we should update that reference to
Yeah, because I'm on the ASHRAE Weather Data Center website. That's where Google takes you at least. So I don't know if that's the right place to find a database. If it's a database, that's probably different. I just, obviously good to make sure we're using the right wording so people can find it if we're going to require.
Yeah,
Vince,
Vince,
that's a really good point. I'm sorry, go
Vince,
ahead.
I think that's it. Yeah. I just don't know which one to use. There's like the International Weather for Energy Calculations, which is what I would imagine it's under.
And is this something then that we would add into section 3.3? Like the code standards and laws referenced in the MAC code? Even though it's not really code standard or law, it's a database?
I think if it's not part of any ASHRAE standard per se, then we would just need to provide information in the annex on how it can be accessed.
So I missed that other part. Vince, were you saying that ASHRAE doesn't require this as part of their standard?
No, I wasn't saying that at all. And if this is actually built into some other, ASHRAE standard, then I'm probably just missing that. I just did a quick search for it and came to this ASHRAE Weather Data Center website and didn't see whether, dehumidification weather data as a link here, as an item, or as a product. So I just wanted to make sure we were is being referred to correctly, and that other folks who maybe aren't familiar with it could find it effectively.
How about this? Instead of us spending any more time on this, we'll assume that there is some database that's not actually a standard when we vote on it. And then after the fact, I'll go back to the committee and ask them to give us, the specific reference information so it can be located. And then we'll add that to the annex. And if it looks like we need to bring up the text, like if we need to make any changes to the text of the change request at all, then we will bring it back to a letter ballot. Does that sound like it would be a good process there?
Sounds good to me.
Sure. Okay. So we'll go ahead and vote on it as is here, assuming we're not making any changes to it. And then if we need to make changes, we'll readdress it. Okay, is anybody opposed to this change request? Oh, I'll count that as a unanimous yes then. And I'm gonna get rid of that split. Oh, and it lost me. You guys remember what number we were at? There we are. Okay, that's it. All right, the next one we voted on already. So the next one we have is 422-331-0001. And this is adding in a sub-bullet for chemical storage spaces, saying that the air handling system is independent from the indoor aquatic facility climate control system and shall not be interconnected. So we had some discussion about this already, but then when we actually defined, indoor aquatic facility and found that that definition covered just the pool room and not the other ancillary rooms like locker rooms and things, then it made it a lot more clear. I had a comment in there from our last meeting that more edits were needed, but this was at the end of the meeting when I think we're all like, I know I was getting frazzled. And I'm looking at it again and thinking, I don't know that it needs more edits. What do you guys think? You think it's okay the way it is?
I think there's a lot easier way to write it. I mean, it's basically the first part of it is a statement that it's independent and shall not be interconnected. But
Oh,
I
so
guess
make
it's
it
fine.
shall
It
be
seems like kind of
instead
awkward
of-
language, but I guess the intent is there. But if we want to, specify that it shall, it should just be like the air handling system shall be independent from, the indoor aquatic facility climate control system. I don't know if independent is enough or if we have to directly say it shall not be interconnected. You could just say this air handling system shall not be interconnected with the indoor aquatic facility climate control system. Maybe that works.
Yeah, I guess it would depend on what kind of connection you mean, whether the air is connected or the electronics are connected or anything might be connected. Do you think I should make that change then? I already added in the shall be. But you think it would be better to say this air handling system shall not be interconnected with the indoor aquatic facility climate control system and just leave it at that and not have the word independent in there?
Seems reasonable to me. I don't know if anyone with experience with these types of systems, but we already say in the definition of indoor aquatic facility that it doesn't include the chemical room, but now we have to specify that the air handling system shall not be. I think it's more important to specify it shall not be interconnected, because then by default it must be independent, right? So
yeah. I guess I'm tempted to leave the wording the way it is because the Indoor Air Quality Committee drafted it this way. And so in deference to them, I'm thinking maybe leave it the same, but this is, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's awkward, but I think it, you know, it is what it is. It's specifying it shall not be interconnected, so.
Yeah, that's the important part, that it's not interconnected. I mean, that really should be written exhaust system, shall be, you know, a separate exhaust system shall be used or and something like that, but this gets it done.
So except for the change from is to shall be, leave it the way it is? I didn't hear
I
any
don't know
of,
that we need the shall be. I think that it's basically acknowledging that, but I think requiring it not to be interconnected just makes it independent anyway.
so go ahead and make that change that you were talking about.
I think we could probably leave it as is. I mean, I think it would be cleaner if we just said that their handling system shall not be interconnected with the indoor aquatic facility climate control system, but
I'm okay with it. I've gone ahead and making that change. Anybody opposed to me making Amanda's change?
shall not be interconnected with.
Yeah. Shall not be interconnected. I gotta make sure I delete everything that. Oh, we still need the V, don't we? Okay, let me read that to everybody in case you can't tell through all the strikeouts and everything on my screen. So the air handling system shall not be interconnected with the indoor aquatic facility climate control system, period. All right, you guys ready to vote? Okay, anybody who's opposed to this change request with the changes as it appears on my screen? All right, I'm going to count that as unanimous yes. And we will scoot on down to 422341-0001. Just remember, I need to turn on autosave. Sorry for that break there. Gotta make sure I save things up. All right, so this one, sorry, I should explain it first. This is talking about the ductwork that's exterior to the aquatic facility. And it's a change to say any system ductwork located in the area not being conditioned shall be insulated, just to make sure you don't get condensation. And this is just to kind of clarify that, yeah, which ducts need to be insulated and which ones don't. And the TSC said, yes, makes sense. I think it makes sense. And you guys have any comments? Okay, you guys ready to vote? Is anybody opposed to this? All right, I'll count that as a yes. And the next one we have, oh, we talked about that already. Never mind. Yes, yes. We can talk about that if we have time later. All right, the next one is about air delivery rate. This one is taking out a section about the air handling system design may not consider mechanical fans used to push air within the space as part of the outdoor air calculations for the facility. The TSC, or the indoor air quality folks, they thought that this phrase was confusing and that it should be removed, because essentially when you look at the requirements for calculating the outdoor air, it's clear that you can't consider fans that are being pushing air that are around the space, you know, in that calculation. It's got to be actual outdoor air that's coming in. And so it's kind of obvious, and they thought it would be better to take it out. But the TSC disagreed. They think it should stay in. And I'm kind of ambivalent. I don't think you really need it, but it might help to kind of emphasize that it's, you know, you can't use that airflow as part of your outdoor airflow. So you guys have any comments?
We had a couple ones earlier that was that were about taking out statements like this, and I think we voted, Amanda, I don't know if you remember, I think we voted to leave them in. I don't recall which one specifically though.
I think almost we've been yes for some and no for others, depending on
On which
you
they
know
were.
how important we think it is to make sure that it's kind of a good reminder. I think a lot of times, you know, if it doesn't seem too redundant, and granted, this doesn't, it's not enforceable language. So yeah, it doesn't need to be in there because it has may and not shall, but at the same time, you know, if this is something that's good to remind people of, then, you know, I'm kind of the opinion to leave well enough alone. If we haven't had anyone say this presents a lot of problems with the MAC, it seems like, you know, if it's a useful reminder and helpful, then, you know, it could be annexed, but we could also just leave it in as is.
Do you think it harms anything to leave it in? Do you think it's so confusing that people wouldn't understand what it means? Personally, I think it's, go ahead.
Did the committee give any rationale for why they wanted to take it out?
Yeah, I highlighted it in gray down here. This is a statement from the authors that they had on the change request. They say it's confusing in the fact that it mentions mechanical fans that push the air around the space and then mentions the outside air requirements. So that they just think it's confusing. And mechanical fans that push air around are covered in a different section. So how are you guys leaning? I'm trying to think of how to do this vote and ask everybody for their yays or nays.
I mean, it looks like the TSC thought that, you know, there was value in keeping it. I think that it does sound like it could be written more clearly, but, you know, at this point, that can be a change request for another year. It seems like if the TSC as design professionals thinks it's useful, you know, I think probably most people reviewing plans would think it's useful too if they don't have much experience with air handling systems. So.
Okay, so is anybody opposed? I mean, is anybody in favor of this change request? All right, I will take that as a unanimous no. So that means that the text would stay in the MAC then, according to our recommendation. All right, on to, this is just a clarification, which, anyway, there was just a matter of clarification of what numbers it's referring to. That was the only thing that the TSC had a problem with, because it was, you know, the calculation for air delivery rate, you know, there was just parentheses turnover. But the committee made a clarification of, okay, well, in that 46275 is where you're going to look for, you know, that calculation. And the TSC just had a problem because there was a mix up with the numbering. And what I have down here at the bottom down here, if you guys can see them both at the same time, the way that they wrote this change request was as if that overall reorganization change request was accepted. But since we need these change requests to stand on their own, I wrote a new version down here where the little 5 at the end was changed to a 4. So this is what the old numbering system would say. And then in the change request at the bottom, the 462 change request, then the number with the 5 at the end would remain because that's where it would eventually end up. But for this change request, I think it does need to be a 4 at the end so it can stand alone on its own. So any comments on this? I was tempted to do this as a letter ballot, but since the numbering thing was kind of confusing, I thought, well, we'll just go ahead and talk about it. So is anybody opposed to this change request? Nope. Okay, let's go on. Next one is 4627-0001. This is a long one. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. It's performance requirements for the air handling system, and it's not giving specific numbers per se for most of it. It's just saying general things like you need to maintain homogeneous air quality, you need to assist in removing disinfection byproducts from the space, you know, that sort of thing. The TSC was basically that, you know, they were saying it has merit in principle, but a lot of the stuff isn't really defined in what's measurable. So they're saying, well, the breathing zone, you know, where exactly is the breathing zone? Can we define that? They also were concerned about the 30 feet per minute across the water surface. And the committee didn't just pull that out of their hats. It's actually straight out of ASHRAE 2019 when you're doing calculations for the air handling system. If it exceeds 30 feet per minute, then you do have to do something different in the calculations. And so that number is straight out of just the protocols and the procedures that are in ASHRAE. Let's see, I think there were some other comments I had down here. Yeah, they were saying there's nothing enforceable there. But as far as having, you know, performance requirements rather than prescriptive requirements, this does go along with the general, you know, that goal of having performance requirements. But yeah, it is pretty loose, right? You know, assisted removing DVPs from the space. You know, any air handling system is going to remove some of them, right? But yeah, certainly not all of them. So yeah, I'm kind of ambivalent on this one. I'm not really sure. I think there's a lot of good stuff in here, but I'm not sure how to vote on it. Any comments?
This is Jason. I'm for it as written.
Okay, any other comments before we vote? Is anybody opposed to this change request?
Ellen, I'm sorry, I couldn't get off mute quick enough. Just a question regarding the TSC comment about the language not being enforceable for the enforcement folks. Is that a concern here, the way it's written? And how do you, I guess, are the inspectors capable of measuring this statement in the original 46271 first sentence?
Amanda, Cindy, you guys have any comments about how you can enforce this?
I was thinking more on the lines of, are these items already outlined in ASH? I mean, it seems like it's written weird. Like, is this already an ASHRAE? These criteria? I mean, we have something similar that it has to maintain negative pressure for number 1 in our code. And then we just get the engineer stamped calculations that it shows it meets that criteria. I'm trying to, the others are pretty hard to do. I mean, I like what it's saying in some respects, but it would be really hard for me to, like if this was in the code, it would be hard for me to put it in action.
This is Tina Moore. As far as an inspector goes, we would have our mechanical people work on it. So as far as a pool plan reviewer, we would just note our ordinance. So I don't know if that helps you or not.
Yeah, we would have a mechanical engineer do all of this, so review it.
And so would this text help them?
I mean, how do you, number 5, how would you quantitate? I don't know how they do that. I mean, how do you provide it? I mean, what do you qualify as a comfortable environment?
I think as far as the prescriptive things, I think there's something in there about the air temperature, and also, you know, the relative air and water temperatures.
And the humidity.
Relative humidity and air temperature, and airspeed.
Yeah, I think with this type of performance-based, it would be kind of a reliance on the designer to be saying that these things would be, that it was designed with this intent. You know, I'm not sure if this is out of ASHRAE or not. The thing with ASHRAE is that it is just standard. So if there is something that needs to be required, then it should go in the MAC just to make sure that, you know, it's in there. So I don't see a problem listing the language. It might be better to reference it, but if it was, you know, verbatim or anything. But I think with a lot of these performance-based standards, you know, if there's no prescriptive alternative to point to, then a lot of it is just relying on the design engineer to specify that they're, to basically be the one to acknowledge that they've designed it in accordance with these requirements. And I know that with the chlorine demand factors a couple years back and the chlorinator sizing, we had them put in some language about, you know, if they weren't able to meet capacity or whatever, this is for chlorine or demand rather, then they would have to add capacity. So I don't know, but you know, retrofitting things after the fact obviously is never easy. So I don't know that that type of statement would lend itself well here if they don't design it right the first time around.
This is Vince. Another question on the part of this that gives the most, you know, kind of detail and is prescriptive is the 30, you know, feet per minute velocity. And then in the TSC comments, it says there's no documentation provided to support it, which kind of, you know, and that's the one part that's, you know, that's really prescriptive. And I just wonder, you know, since we do, one of the principles of the MAC, you know, is to provide, you know, an evidence that the changes and the code that's in there is evidence-based. And so I just, is that number a solid number? Should it be 25? Should it be 35? The fact that there's no documentation about it, is that something, that I guess, is that a little bit of a red flag on this?
Oh, there's documentation.
Oh, I'm
It's in
sorry.
yeah, if you look in that ASHRAE 2019 applications handbook, the indoor pool chapter, yeah, if you're below 30, then you don't have to do this extra calculation. If you're above 30, then you do.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. I should have read down further. Okay, good. Thank you.
You couldn't read down further because it was buried.
No problem. Okay, thank
on my
you.
screen. Okay.
Well, that helps.
As far as objectives go, I mean, I like that there's objectives that they have to meet.
Hey, this is James. I'm just wondering if we can enforce or even evaluate these. I mean, enforcing is one question because there's a shall in there, but the other question is, can we even evaluate whether or not, people are comfortable, or whether or not it assists, or, whether or not the air is homogeneous. It just seems really difficult to I mean, you can require it, and I like the ideal, but I'm not sure if you require it, if you can actually evaluate it.
Yeah, James, I had the same problem about the feeder sizing issue. I don't know if you remember from last round. Amanda brought it up already about how, that whoever is building the facility, right, you just kind of, the engineers are expected to justify whatever feeder sizing is required for their particular facility. And yeah, the person reviewing the plans is just going to have to kind of evaluate whether they think their argument is reasonable or not, and then go with it, because there's no established criteria for what size does your feeder need to be. But that is the route that the MAC took in the last round. I don't agree with that particular change, but that is what was done. And so I think that this here is consistent with that. Again, I'm not so sure I agree with it.
I guess I can look at this, but the first part of this addition is to require it to be designed to maintain the space temperature, relative humidity, and dew point as specified in 46263. So if there are specific numbers or ranges in that section, then it does seem, somewhat, there is something to measure it by in terms of whether those are maintained. And it kind of does make parts of that first item that they're adding redundant if, you want it to be homogeneous, obviously, and I guess they assume that means homogeneous space temperature and relative humidity, things like that as well. But it does look like there's already, requirements for some of those big items.
Yeah, that's a very circuitous reference to 46263, because 46263 says that it should meet 4627, which is the section that this is going into. So it refers you back to 46263, which refers you back to 4627 and all the requirements that are there.
Oh, I might have missed that. It might be the new numbering system. Let's look at how this fits in with the big overall picture. Let me go on down here. So 46263 is going to be 984 is that. Oh, wait a minute. We might need to fix some numbering there, because that doesn't talk about. Let me split my screen again.
I'm just looking through this whole section of the existing MAC. It's very performance-based. There's very few actual numbers involved. It's things like, designing to maintain negative air pressure, designing to but to consider airflow across the surface, to minimize reentrainment of exhaust, to, for condensation and mold control. So a lot of it is just, objectives and not specific ways to get there.
Or 6262 has design factors for performance requirements. Maybe they just said the wrong reference number.
In the new version or the old version?
The existing version.
I don't see anything in there about the relative humidity and dew point and stuff though. Is it in there and I'm just missing it? I'm not sure. I guess we don't have to worry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It looks like under 4627 are the performance requirements. And, so there's minimum outdoor air, air delivery rate, relative humidity, negative air pressure. So a lot of those are directly referencing ASHRAE's handbook in the 2011 version. There are some requirements like for a system alarm if it falls below a certain level, but I think 4627 is where those are really all spelled out.
So this should really be 4627 then, up here. Okay, I'm going to unsplit my screen again. And of course, I did it on the wrong part. Sorry. 467.
And this is hard too, because I'd have to look at it more closely to see if a lot of these objectives are already pretty much contained in that section, or if these are separate objectives. But it does seem like it's just heading up that section, the existing 4627, by putting this right at the front. So maybe it's just setting some objectives that are then, clarified more throughout the section 4627.
Yeah, I think it is. I have to admit, I'm still pretty ambivalent on this one. Any more comments?
I mean, I guess if the ad hoc committee considered these, kind of objectives to really design a space for, you know, I just looked real quickly at the section on DBP buildup, and, you know, there's nothing in that section right now that mentions low velocity airflow, just needing airflow to move across with the air-water interface. So, I mean, if these are things that are added to, you know, make sure that, you know, take it a step up instead of just considering airflow across the air-water surface to specify, you know, velocities and what you need to do if it's, you know, greater or less than 30 FPM, then, you know, maybe, you know, there is some rationale for it being a best practice. But I don't see the ad hoc committee's rationale for putting it in there. But I assume that they do feel like these are objectives that you would want to achieve in a system design.
Yeah, I think that 30 feet per minute is in the next change request. No, it's not in the next one. I was thinking it was in there. I'm sorry, I'm driving you guys crazy looking through here. Okay, maybe not. Never mind. Yeah, I think this is the only spot where it appears. Where were we? Sorry. So are we kind of leaning yes, or are we leaning no? Or should I take a full vote? Okay, everybody who votes yes for this, tell me your names. Oh, nobody. Okay. Does anybody not vote no?
I'm
sorry.
Go ahead, Joe.
This is Jason. This is Jason.
Jason.
I vote yes. Sorry.
I'll vote yes as well.
Who is that?
Miklos.
Thank you.
And this is setting up this chapter, right? Or this section?
Yeah.
Follows?
Yes.
So this is Cindy. I guess then I would vote yes if these are the objectives that follow.
This is Amanda. I'd vote yes as well.
This is James. I'm in.
This is Jody. I vote yes.
This is Tina Moore. I vote yes.
So who is that?
Tina.
Tina, thank you.
Tina
It's
Moore.
hard to hear.
I had to call in. I couldn't get on Zoom. It kicked me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. All right, I'm still pretty ambivalent on this one. I think I'm a yes. I'm not really sure. Okay, who are the no's then?
Kevin, I'm a yes.
I'm sorry, who's a yes?
Kevin.
Kevin.
I think
Yeah,
that's 9.
And this is Vince. You know, I'm a yes as well. Although I mean, I think there are parts of it, like James has mentioned, that are pretty hard to, you know, evaluate, and I'm not sure how meaningful they are, although they're just objectives. But yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so it looks like are we unanimous yes then?
Joe's gonna stay a no,
Okay.
as written.
Any other no's? Did I miss anybody? All right, on to the next one. 46271-0001. There's several changes that were made in here. One was the title. One was to update the reference. Another one was to say the design capacity to supply no less than the minimum outdoor air requirements. So usually, minimum outdoor air would mean, that it's minimum. You can't have any less than that. But I think the quality committee needed a little more clarification there. So no less than the minimum. And then they added in this other subsection of the minimum outdoor air requirements may be higher than the amount calculated using ASHRAE standard as determined by the registered design. So, you might do all your little calculations according to ASHRAE, but there might be some other, factors that would mean that the outdoor air requirement is actually higher than what the ASHRAE standard is. So the TSC, agreed with updating the references, providing clarification. They thought it needed to be divided into 2 separate change requests because these changes in this one. And they're also saying that there's nothing enforceable in this section, and that the added language would be better suited to the annex. But I think we've made other the MAC makes other statements about how standards may be higher, in other situations. So I don't think this is unique to this particular section to make a statement like this. So in general, I think I would vote for yes on this.
I'd agree, Ellen.
Any other comments on this? Is anybody opposed to this change request? Okay, I'll count that as unanimous yes. And we'll go into the next one. Obviously, I'm going to be moving fast, you guys, through these. So if I go too fast and you need to go back and say, wait, oh no, I want to vote different, feel free to interrupt. Okay, 46272-0001 system alarm. Right now, it's saying that there's going to be an alarm if the airflow is less than 0.48 CFM per foot squared. But they changed it to be, that might not be the exact requirement for some facilities, right? They said the minimum amount as designated by the design professional for each mode of operation. So there might be various modes of operation, normal mode, meat, like swim meet mode, or unoccupied mode. So there could be different modes for the airflow. And so that one number wouldn't fit for everything. So they wanted to provide some flexibility there. So the TSC voted no on this. They wanted the annex language to be included to provide some direction on how to determine how to set that alarm point. And but I think the alarm point, it's just basically, what is the minimum airflow that you need, which is defined, in the MAC. And yeah, and they're saying that there's no design for the plan reviewer. Personally, I think it's all right. And that annex material can certainly be provided, outside of the CMAC process. The IAQ can get together and provide some material for the annex. So any comments?
So is this something where they would need 3 different alarm settings and have to have each alarm setting, say, okay, now we're in unoccupied mode, so I have to switch it so that the alarm setting is for that? And it's just, is this going to be difficult operationally to maintain, as opposed to just, requiring it for a specific minimum level that if it falls below that it'll signal something? And I don't know how different it would be between those levels either, in terms of the CFM per square feet. Is the minimum for normal occupied going to be really different than the unoccupied? It might. I'm not sure. It just seems like if the intent is to just require, if you have very little outdoor air or an alarm, then, is it necessary to really break it down into all of these different things, or is it just going to be really complicated for operation?
Yeah, there is a requirement for how much it can be, like for most, for the indoor aquatic facility, not including stadium seating, which we're going to talk about later, it's no matter what the occupancy is, if it's occupied, it has to be full flow. And if it's unoccupied, then it can be reduced a certain amount. So there are two numbers there, and I think it's 25%, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But for stadium seating, that has a whole different classification. And so you could have a turn down depending on how many people you, at least according to the change request that the indoor air quality community is creating. And so, yeah, it could be fairly complicated. But I think that if you're going to have the systems in place to where you could count the people to know you could reduce your airflow and do that, I think if you're sophisticated enough to do that, then you're sophisticated enough to have a multiple alarms depending on what's happening with the system. And if you're not sophisticated enough to do that, then maybe you shouldn't be turning your handling system down and just going full flow all the time. I'm not sure. Any more comments?
I guess just a question. Was there a reason that 0.48 CFM was chosen to be included in the first place as the default number? And, you know, similar to some of the other CRs that we've looked at, is there a need to keep that bare minimum number in there in addition to the requirements of the design professional, or was that sort of a random number?
Oh, I'm guessing it probably came from ASHRAE somewhere. I'm not sure. But since the design professional is going to have to be going by ASHRAE anyway.
Based on the annex, it looked like they had actually proposed an increase above ASHRAE, but then with the public comments that were received, they ended up deferring to ASHRAE outdoor air requirements in the final version, but they flagged this for something that needed future work.
Sounds like this might have been one of those hotly debated issues, huh?
I guess for here, I'm just kind of considering, you know, do we require something for different modes, or we just require a bare minimum? And then if they want to do multiple alarms for different modes, you know, and, you know, they can. Obviously, it's the ad hoc committee that proposed this, but it just, it seems like that they're making it more complicated, and I'm not sure that it's already a pretty, you know, the air handling is something that most pools don't have a very good system in place anyway, most in existence. So, you know, if we're going towards new construction, you know, do we want to, you know, require, you know, multiple alarms for multiple levels, or just something that's going to show if they don't meet, you know, the absolute minimum required?
Or would you want to put an or in there? So maybe is below 0.48 or the minimum amount as designated by the design professional. So you'd have that option of going with the old limit or going with the new one where you have these multiple alarms.
I think that makes sense as long as, you know, the minimum amount. I guess, it depends whether that minimum amount is going to be more or less than the 0.48. But I guess if design professionals saying that you say could have less indoor air flow and still, you know, say it's during unoccupied times or something, I guess that could work. But then it still provides a standard that people can look to if they're not concerned with different modes of operation and they're just really looking for something. You know, if there's just something that we want to make sure that there's enough outdoor air, you know, if it's 20 degrees out and they, you know, they want to turn down the amount of outdoor air because then they have to warm it up and that's really bad for air quality, then we would want something to be alarmed.
So I put another version of the change request down below the original one, where I brought back the 0.48 and added the word or. So, reading that carefully then, does that cover it, Amanda, you think?
I think so, as long as there's no concern that, you know, the different modes are going to be, you know, that the design professional is not going to have anything, you know, extremely below 0.48. But if they have justification for it, I guess, you know, it should be fine.
And if the 48 came from ASHRAE and if the design professional is going to have to abide by ASHRAE anyway, it sounds like they wouldn't be able to do anything that would be too low.
Right. Yeah, I'm good with that.
You might want to add each applicable mode because all indoor facilities wouldn't necessarily have a meet. You know, they wouldn't have a competition event per se if it were, I don't know, an indoor hotel or something, or a water park, or, you know.
Well, actually, I think meat might be because the only, later when we talk about the air quality requirements, they're all the same for all indoor aquatic facilities, except stadium seating. That's the only area of an indoor aquatic facility that could even possibly have a different air quality air turnover requirements. And so I think the only reason you would use the stadium seating would be for meat, but I'm not sure. But I think it helps to add in the word applicable. But I think meat mode might be the only one that would actually really would apply, but who knows?
Yeah, it looks like they're just listing examples there anyway.
Yeah. So you guys ready to vote on this new version? All right, is anybody opposed to the new version? All right, and unanimous yes to the new version. On down to 46273-0001, real-time occupancy. This is where we're getting into stadium seating. So the design of the air handling system for stadium seating areas shall meet the requirements in ASHRAE 6291 for outdoor air rate, so 0.06 CFM per foot squared, and the people outdoor air rate, 7.5 CFM per person, based on the theoretical peak occupancy of the stadium seating area. So this is kind of complicated. When the TSC read this, they're like, wait a minute, before it was for everybody, right? But now you're saying that it's only for the stadium seating area that we even look at theoretical peak occupancy. And so it's not that the Indoor Air Quality Committee is saying that we're changing anything for the main part of the facility. Because in the main part of the facility, if you look in the ASHRAE regs, there's nothing about theoretical peak occupancy for aquatic facilities. So no matter what your occupancy is for your aquatic facility, it's not making any difference in the ASHRAE calculations. It's only for the stadium seating areas where you would even account for the people that are in there, which to me, it makes no sense. You know, they need to actually, because you're going to have a lot more disinfection byproduct production with your bathers in there. You're going to have more agitation of the water from all your swimmers. So I think that, but that's an ASHRAE standard issue that I think they should address sometime in the future. But the way ASHRAE is written now, you wouldn't use that theoretical peak occupancy number in your calculations for the most of the aquatic facility, only for the stadium seating area. And in the stadium seating area, it's still kind of ambiguous about, okay, well, which of these categories in ASHRAE really applies? And so it was good that the Indoor Air Quality Committee said, okay, use these categories. These are the categories you want to use. You want to use the area outdoor air rate and the people outdoor air rate. And there's a table in ASHRAE where you can look down, you can see these entries, and you can use the entries. Without actually going back to the ASHRAE codes, I did not understand this at all. But once I looked at the ASHRAE codes, then it made absolute sense to have it written like this. But I can see why the TSC had major problems with it, because it makes no sense unless you're familiar with the weirdness of the ASHRAE codes. So anybody have any comments on this or any questions about what I just probably didn't describe very well? You guys just trying to digest.
So in essence, the facility will be zoned off in the calculations, calculating this separately from the rest of the facility?
Yes.
So is real-time occupancy the right term for that? If this isn't for overall, like, capacity of the natatorium?
Well, the theoretical peak occupancy has a section of it for the stadium seating. Let me see if I can find that section.
It just seems like the existing 46273 is very broad, which is here, you know, design of the air handling system shall meet the requirements based on the theoretical peak occupancy, and now we're just specifying that it's the system for stadium seating areas.
Right, because it makes no sense to say that you're going to follow ASHRAE and design the air handling system to meet the theoretical peak occupancy, because when you look at ASHRAE, for most facilities that don't have stadium seating, you would never use that number in your calculations. It's only if you have stadium seating that you would use that theoretical peak occupancy number. And there is a separate theoretical peak occupancy number in section 412353. And so there's a density factor for stadium seating, and you would use that number.
But for a facility that doesn't have stadium seating, how would the real-time occupancy be calculated?
It's not.
So it's not applicable to any other type of facility?
It's not a factor in the ASHRAE calculations. That's what I disagree with. I think ASHRAE needs to fix that and account for, the bather load in aquatic facilities, but it's not in there now. And I'm not an ASHRAE expert. This is, me pulling the code down and looking through it and saying, wait, is this right? could they really not account for this? And I couldn't find it in there anywhere, where they account for, the bathers in the water and how would you, increase your airflow depending on, the occupancy of the aquatic facility, not just the stadium seating. And I couldn't find anything. Anybody else who's looked through ASHRAE, have you ever found that? Yeah, it seems pretty unbelievable, Amanda. But
well, it just seems like most aquatic facilities, a lot of them, the indoor ones aren't going to have stadium seating. So what's going to be, does real-time occupancy not exist in other types of facilities? Is it specific to seating areas? Or, because basically they're changing the section to only have this section apply to stadium seating. And it kind of seems like the title would need to be changed, but I'm not sure if real-time occupancy is a term that's familiar to people that are doing this, and if it's really only applying to people sitting somewhere, or I would assume just real-time occupancy would be the number of people in the pool area, in the natatorium at a given time. And so based on that assumption, it seems like we're changing it to only require calculations based on the number of people sitting in the room in spectator seating, which seems like we're changing the requirement pretty, we're changing the requirement quite a bit, and it's not going to apply to all facilities. And I'm just wondering, if this should be a separate requirement, or I'm just really confused about why they would want to change it.
I think they have to change it because as written, the way it was, the design of the air handling system shall meet the requirements for the number of CFM per foot squared based on the theoretical peak occupancy. There are no requirements for the CFM per theoretical peak occupancy for most aquatic facilities. It's only if they have stadium seating that you can find any kind of requirements for that. So like a normal, pool facility that doesn't have, a stadium seating area, you wouldn't be able to find a requirement for the number of CFM per theoretical peak occupancy. Those numbers don't exist.
But if we left it the way it was, would it open it up to, if there were numbers in the future, then it would include those? Whereas if we change it, would it not? Or is it just too confusing the way it's written to keep it the way it is, and we should change it for that reason?
Yeah, I think it's too confusing because the numbers don't exist. And we can always change it once they do exist, but I'm guessing it will take years. Yeah, I really struggled with this one, which is why I just bit the bullet and bought the ASHRAE standard and just read the thing to try to figure out why this does not seem right. But now that I've done the homework, I think it is right. Yeah,
I guess we should vote then. Either everyone else is just as confused or I'm the only one, but we should probably move on regardless.
Or do you want to put off voting on this and everybody can do their homework on it, or you want to just vote?
No, I think we need to move on. I mean, if everyone else seems comfortable, then.
I just have one question. Does theoretical peak occupancy calculation not include stadium seating areas for the aquatic venue?
In the MAC, if you look for the section on theoretical peak occupancy, there is a separate entry for stadium seating. But the theoretical peak occupancy for for like the pool itself and for, you know, other things, those numbers are used for other things besides air quality, like for lifeguarding or I don't remember what all they're used for, but they are used for other purposes.
Correct. But theoretical peak occupancy, though, by definition, I believe includes all those different pieces. I'm just curious why we would need a separate section just to address stadium seating areas if it's already included in the theoretical peak occupancy calculations for the overall facility.
Oh, because there are no theoretical peak occupancy calculations for the air handling of the rest of the facility. Did that make sense?
It does, but that seems like a different CR. Seems like the theoretical peak occupancy should be what the foundation is for your air handling, not just for
You would think.
parts and pieces, right? You should have it all rolled into one overall thing, because in reality, it's all the same place.
Yep, you would think that that would enter into the ASHRAE calculations. It does not.
Okay, fine. That changes my vote.
Let me put it this way. I could not find, like I hunted hard through there trying to find something where it would actually enter into the calculations and could not find it. It doesn't mean it's not there, but I could not find it. And I had a concerted effort looking for it.
Ellen, let me ask a question if I can. Can a facility either have a combined air handling system or a separate one for the seats and the pool, for example? I mean, could this need for separate systems do this, for combined systems it wouldn't apply?
I don't know how that would be handled. I know there's a later change request. It might even be the next one about turning down systems. And the only systems that would be allowed to be turned down would be the stadium seating section. So obviously there's going to have to be some separate mechanical equipment for the stadium seating area versus the rest of the indoor aquatic facility. But I don't know how to answer your question.
Well, it sounds like it would typically be separate then. So this would kind of make more sense to me if it were typically separate, to have a separate requirement.
Yeah, when I think about the facilities I've been in for like the really big swim meets, it's been like one big open cavern, right? And the stadium seating area is part of that, and there's no wall in between. But there are certainly vents that are pointed towards the stadium seating area versus vents towards the swimmer area. But yeah, I'm not enough of a HVAC person to be able to answer.
I mean, based on the definition of an indoor aquatic facility, it would include the spectator stadium seating areas within that definition, in addition to the aquatic venues.
So this is Cindy. Don't they account for it in ASHRAE as if your pool has a spectator area versus a non-spectator area with the number of turnovers, air exchanges that has to be made?
Yeah, like there's the pool area, and there's the calculations for just the pool area, and but that pool area doesn't vary with the bather load or with the occupancy. It's just, here's your number. Whereas the separate table for the spectator area, which is the stadium seating, yeah, there are separate numbers, and those are the numbers that the committee put into this change request. Did that answer your question?
No, I'm confused. No, because I think they're trying to account for it by upping the air. I don't know. I think they're trying to account for it another way in their requirements, but I'm not 100% positive.
Would it help if I pulled ASHRAE down? I've got a copy of it on my computer here somewhere. I'll maybe stop sharing and go find it and then pull it up.
Yeah, I just went to find mine. I realized the table has one thing.
Do you guys want me to pull it down, or do you guys want to get moving on this, or what do you want to do?
Well, they also have some notes in their table that default occupancy densities, default to certain things when conditions are unknown. So I don't know. I would want to look at it before I voted on it. I would want to look at the ASHRAE.
Do you guys want to bring this back to another meeting then?
I think that's a good idea, and also if we could get some more either rationale from the committee as to why they're making this change, but also assurance that we're not changing it to no longer include design for the rest of the bathers in the facility. You know, what happens to this section if there's no stadium seating? You know, then they don't have to design it for any occupancy. I'm confused at how, I'm still confused at it seems like they're taking a broad section and making it very narrow for only certain cases, and then does that make it so that there's no requirements for any other venue if they don't have spectator seating?
Oh, no, there's still airflow requirements that are not based on the occupancy, and those are in other sections of the map here. So there's still airflow requirements for the other sections, they're just not based on the occupancy.
So occupancy, but a bather is not an occupant of the facility, it's only people sitting down?
It means that when you calculate the airflow you need for a pool facility, the number of people doesn't go into that calculation.
All right, I'm still confused, but yeah, let's bring this back on another call. Maybe we can get some more discussion going by email or some more answers from the ad hoc committee. Maybe trying to explain what their intent is for this change.
Okay. The next one is the same kind of issue. It's 462731-0001. And this is if you're going to turn down the outdoor airflow with normal pools, with the normal pool area, you're not allowed to turn it down unless it's completely unoccupied. But for stadium seating, you should be able to modulate it based on the occupancy of that stadium seating area. And so that's why they added in these words about the stadium seating area and in those areas. So do you guys want to defer this one too until the whole relationship between the pool facility and the stadium seating area is understood, or do you think we can go ahead and vote on this?
I think it should probably be deferred.
Okay.
Agreed.
46274-0001. All right, let's see.
Actually, Ellen, I found one paragraph in the ASHRAE standard, and it says, let's see, although swim meets are infrequent, they must be considered higher than normal operations. To model the swim meet load accurately, it's recommended that the designer know the number of spectators, the number of swimmers on the deck, and the operational conditions required during the meet. The operator may request a peak relative humidity of 55% as well, which has significant impacts on the load.
What section is that in?
That is in a paragraph on load estimation, under load estimation.
Is there a number for that section?
No, well, I think I have a really old version of it. But this is 2011, right? That's the last edition. It's on, 5.6, it looks like.
Okay.
And it's under nanotoriums, under load estimation. I've got it highlighted in mine, in my copy.
Okay.
So,
I'll scan that and I'll send it to everybody so you guys can all read it. I'm sorry, what was that?
Sorry, I was just going to say, so I think the table says one thing, but the paragraph is recommending it. It's not mandatory that they do it, but it recommends that they take into account all the other factors of the total number of people. Spectators, swimmers, and other operating conditions during those peak times.
Okay.
But maybe that's why they had a hard time putting it down too, since it's a recommendation.
Yeah.
And then the air delivery rates are higher if you have spectator areas. Because non-spectator areas have 4 to 6 air exchanges, and pools with spectator areas increase 6 to 8.
Oh, wow.
So I think they're trying to account for it in different sections.
Okay, and that was ASHRAE 62.1 you're reading out of?
It's under, well, my copy says it's under 5.6, I guess.
I mean, the standard itself, it's ASHRAE 62.1.
I have no idea what mine is. Sorry. I've got a typed copy. Sorry, it came out of the 2011 handbook.
Oh, it's a handbook. It's not the actual standard then.
Yeah, mine's the actual handbook.
Okay, yeah, because the handbook doesn't actually have the requirements. It has recommendations.
Yeah. So, yeah, sorry.
Okay, no, that's good, because at least I know where to look then to kind of help. And I'll try to get, supporting materials to you guys to help you guys, understand this and help myself understand.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
No, thanks.
I thought I had a copy of the actual code, but I don't.
Yeah, they're expensive. They're it's up. All right. Is this the one that no. Okay, so 46274-0001. It's kind of adding in a new definition, which the TSC was like, that needs to be in a new section. Talk with the authors and split it out into a different section, and put let me just show you the stuff at the bottom of what was done to it. So the original CR was split up. So then there's this statement that was existing already where it's just that it was updated, right, from 2011 to 2019 for the new ASHRAE standard. Defining a term called air delivery rate, which means the supply CFM of the air handler systems comprised of a combination of outside air and return air minus any exhaust air if exhausted within the air handler itself. And then there's a whole new subsection of 462741 that states the air delivery rate shall be sufficient to meet the latent and sensible cooling loads and the heating loads of the space, and to meet the requirements of the air distribution system defined in sections 46276 through 46279. So it ended up being kind of a complicated change request here. One, just to update the reference, one to add a definition. And you know, the term air delivery rate had been used already within the MAC, but hadn't actually been defined. And so they're defining it in another requirement. And TRC, in addition to the organizational stuff, they also don't like the words about being sufficient to, because they're saying that it's wide open to interpretation. So any comments? All right, so we ready for a vote then? Is anybody opposed to this change request? Nope, I will count that as unanimous yes, and we'll move on. 46275-0001. This is just adding some more clarification. To change it from consistent airflow to constant airflow, and to change the wording to mean, well, what do you really mean here? So it's to provide continuous airflow through all parts of the indoor aquatic facility, to minimize any stagnant areas, stratification, temperature, and humidity, provide homogeneous air quality, space temperature, relative humidity, and pressure throughout the space. So they're really kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of, you know, what are you really looking for here? Instead of just saying, yeah, you need to make sure you have flow. The TSC said it was not technically defensible. I'm not sure I really understand why. But I think a comment they did make that was that without any enforceable provisions. So the existing statement, right, didn't have any enforceable provisions, and now at least you have at least a list of things that you can actually measure, like temperature and humidity, to see if they're homogeneous or not. So I think it's an improvement on the existing wording, but I think it's a problem with the existing wording and of the change request that there aren't really any enforceable provisions in it. So just because it's an improvement, I would vote yes, but the whole thing is unenforceable.
I think this helps specify the objectives that, one of the objectives that was put at the beginning of the section that we voted to put in there. So I think it's useful.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, this is Jason. I'm good with it.
This is Tina. I'm good with it.
Yep. Cindy's good with it. And I've actually enforced something similar to this at one time. So we had, I think they were pool packs that actually shut off with some temperature inversions, and it cut off the air, and the program, it was all on a program, and they actually, I made them print it out because I had to take the pool pack tutorial, and figured it out, and the computer system showed that it actually shut off the air. So.
Huh, interesting. So it is enforceable then. Okay. So is anybody opposed to this one? All right, I'll count that as unanimous yes. And we will go on to the next one. This next one, I guess we could have done as a ballot, email ballot. Sorry, I should have suggested that. It's just to update the records to the 2019 version of ASHRAE and just saying Chapter 6 instead of Places of Assembly because they changed the title to it. So is anybody opposed to this change request? Okay, I count that as unanimous yes. And the next one is 462761-0001 about dew point. So there are quite a few changes here, and then like talking with the authors, we made some more changes to it. Part of it is, which section are you referencing and that kind of thing, which we can get the numbers all straightened out. But as far as the text, the new text would be shall be designed to maintain the dew point as defined in the technical details section 46263 item 5. And the design team will design the enclosure to limit condensation on interior surfaces of the aquatic space as prescribed by the architect to ensure condensation is avoided on walls, ceilings. This is where we get into glass again, glass and floor interior surfaces, as well as the interior structure of these building components. So it's, taking that, that wording and expanding it to get more specific about the surfaces that they're talking about. But there's quite a bit of rewording in there. You want to read it carefully. The TSC wasn't real happy about as prescribed by the architect. This assumes that this information is provided by the architect, but I'm thinking, wouldn't the architect have to tell you whether you're going to have glass windows or not? I would have thought that would be what the architect does, but they're wondering if that's not provided by the architect. Then there's a numbering issue, and then they said the cost impact isn't known, and the word again about enforceable criteria.
This kind of relates to the one that we did earlier. Didn't we vote no on that?
Yeah, we voted no on, I think we did we?
I can't believe I can't remember now.
Yeah, it was way far. Let's see. Did we go back and look for it? I don't think it should be too hard to find. Yeah, it's right there. Okay. Yeah, we voted
No.
on it.
To me, it sounds like it's kind of a reiteration of the same edition. So.
Uh-oh, where were we? Did I go too far? No, we voted on that one. I'm sorry. Comments, yeah. Vote. Sorry.
It was that. I think it was that one.
Oh, just skip it. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like it's a reiteration of the last one. And to me, it doesn't matter whether it's the architect or whoever that's prescribing it. That's all kind of part of the surfaces anyways.
Yeah, because the way it's currently written then would be the air handling system shall be designed to maintain the dew point less than the dew point of the interior walls at all times. So they changed that to actually kind of be a little more broad and performance-based as far as the limit condensation. So it's not just a spelling out the individual surfaces, right? But it's also getting rid of that requirement to have the dew point less than the dew point on the interior walls.
And I retract my statement because if somebody can explain dew point to me, that would be awesome. I try to get my wife to do it, but I have no clue what that actually means.
I can explain it in one sentence, but it's still not going to help you much. Is that, you know, the point at which you're going to actually condense water out of the air, right? But then to understand how that fits into this, you need a deeper understanding of it, and I don't think I can explain it well enough to do that.
The best explanation I have for dew point is it's the point where the air can't hold the water anymore. I'm going to say the same thing as condensate, but you know, when I have to explain that locally, that's kind of what I use.
And it's like a function of temperature and humidity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and it's kind of a sliding scale based on temperature and humidity. So you can have a really, really dry air without, let's say Arizona, right? Really, really dry and high temp. So the dew point might be, 32 degrees. But, you know, let's take South Mississippi right now. We have a really, really high humidity and really, really high temp. So the dew point's probably 77. So it's going to vary based on local environmental conditions.
So then does removing dew point from this section, I guess, make it easier to engineer or allow for more options?
It'll provide more flexibility to the design team to avoid condensation however they can do it. For me, I would defer to the indoor air quality folks because they're the experts in this stuff. And since they're the ones suggesting this, pretty much for that reason, I would vote yes on it.
Yeah, I would agree. There's nothing that gives me pause.
And just as a clarification, Ellen, on 46263 item 5, is that from a new change request? Did we approve that change request? Is that the right reference?
Well, yeah, that's what I put another little number down here in yellow. Because if that change request to reorganize, if everything isn't accepted, right, then that's the wrong number, and it should be 41232.
Got it.
Yeah, so I'll make that change when when we do whatever changes are made to this change request. I'll put it in the TRC evaluation form.
And
I will say this: for air handling systems, for indoor aquatic venues, you can't do it without having dew point, without addressing dew point. It's absolutely impossible unless all you're doing is just turning over with fresh air from the outside. But any sort of conditioning requires dew point to be factored in if you're going with a dehumidification system, et cetera.
Yeah, they're not saying ignore dew point. They're just saying, that you just handle it. They're not saying it has to be less than the dew point of the interior walls. They're saying that, shall be designed to maintain the dew point as defined in other sections. And
just clarifying the role of dew point in air handling. That's all.
Okay.
And Alan, just to make sure so 41232, was that another change request that got approved? Because that right now looks like it only has 4 items and we're identifying item 5.
Okay, let me mark this so I can find it again.
Yeah, sorry.
So we can come back to it. Okay, so I'm going for the one with the pluses here, and let me highlight it in some obnoxious color so I can find it. Let's do pink. Okay, so we're gonna go up to 41232 because I think that was another change request.
And
Yeah,
we voted
5. Yeah, it's basically in the plan of what you design the desired humidity relative to what you're going to be. So you good with that? Should I go back down?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Sure. So where were we? At the pink. There it is. Okay. Are you guys ready to vote on this?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Is anybody opposed to this? All right, I'll give it a unanimous yes. And we will go on. This is one of the few that the TRC actually said yes on. Yay! So the air handling out of the word distribution system, instead of saying shall be designed to achieve several objectives, including, they said shall be designed to inhibit condensation and mold by maintaining homogeneous space conditions, flushing the outside walls and windows, and taking out the delivering the outside air to the breathing area. Because that's handled elsewhere, like in some of the other change requests, as far as being able to get outside air to where the swimmers are. The TSC actually said it was acceptable as submitted, and their usual comments about, yeah, having, support for the annex and stuff like that. Any comments? No? Okay, anybody opposed to this change request? Nope, I will give this unanimous yes. The next one was withdrawn, so we're going to skip that one. The next one is annex text, which the technical committee said yes to. Just talking about, chloramine production and helping to reduce that, or reduce the effects of it and get it out of there. Any comments? Anybody opposed to this change request? All right, unanimous yes. Next one is 46278-0002. Another one that the technical committee said yes to. The word exhaust was added, so sufficient return / exhaust air intakes shall be placed near aquatic venue surfaces. They thought it was helpful, and they agreed with it as is. Any comments?
How can it be an exhaust intake?
Because of the weird way that people use terminology. When
So is
you,
it the intake of the air from the aquatic venue into the exhaust system?
yeah, because that air that you're pulling from the facility, right? It can either go through your heater and everything, or it could be exhausted out to the outside of the building. And those, where that air goes from your pool area into those ducts is the air intake. That's my understanding of the terminology, at least. But it does sound really weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So it's saying there's two types of air that can go into the intake, either returned air or exhaust air.
I think
Is
that's
that accurate?
yeah, if you look at the next change request down below where it's talking about sufficient return air intakes, so replace low in the space near aquatic venue surfaces, such as they draw air across the water and pull in the highest concentration of airborne DDPs. So it's, yeah, it's that air leaving the facility that's going into the intake. That looks like an oxymoron there, doesn't it?
Yeah, thanks. I'd vote for this.
Okay, is anybody opposed to this change request? All right, I'll count as unanimous yes. And then on down to that next one, which I just read to you, basically, yeah, having that air then that has all the DVPs in it be pulled out and having an air intake low in the aquatic venue so it can do that. The technical support committee, they agree that it has merit in principle, but they're wondering, was there, documentation to confirm the validity of it? And so I went back to the ASHRAE standard, or the ASHRAE handbook, and found several mentions of, how it's recommended that you do it. So I think as far as if you can count the ASHRAE handbook as, validating that this is a good idea, I think it's been validated that it's a good idea. They did also state that there needs to be more research required to determine what is sufficient. And I agree there, but who knows? And if it's going to depend on beta load, it's going to depend on, all kinds of other factors that I think it would be really, really hard to specify that here. And so I think a performance-based standard of just saying, yeah, it just needs to be sufficient. I think it's going to have to be good enough at this point. What do you guys think?
Sounds good to me. We're 15 minutes over the call time, and the numbers have dropped significantly there. Amanda, do you want to address that?
Oops.
Yeah, so I know that we've had at least 2 people drop off. 5, 6, 7, hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It looks like we only have 8 members present still. So unfortunately, we won't have enough we can do recommendations kind of like what we did last time, but I need to go by 3:30. I don't know if we want to just make a recommendation on this one, and then I hate to postpone these again, but I think we're just going to have to because we don't have enough people to vote. And I know that looks like Jason and Miklos and Michelle dropped off, and I know that Jason and Miklos have been, kind of more familiar with some of these things than the rest of us. So and I think we left Tina as well. So, yeah, let's just finish up the provisional vote for this one. And instead of doing a whole separate voting list, I'll just, when I send out the call summary, I'll have everyone, we'll just, if we're unanimous here, I'll have just the people specifically that weren't on the call vote. You guys don't have to vote again like we did with all of last week's agenda.
Okay. So we'll just keep going for the next 15 minutes then, finish out at 3:30 and just do provisional votes for everything from here on?
Can everyone else stay till 3:30, or does anyone else have to drop off after this one?
I could stay till 3:30.
I can stay at 3:30 as well.
Yeah, I can stay.
I'm good for 3:30.
Yeah, I'm good till 3:30, but I'm also on another chat, so I may not quite be fully here.
Okay. All right, then yeah, let's try to hopefully finish these up and just get some provisional votes, and we got to keep moving forward. We have so many CRs left. So.
All right. So is anybody opposed to this change request? Okay, I'll give it unanimous yes for a provisional vote. This next one, 462781-0003. There's a series of these, and there's sub-bullets, and this one we just did, which we just voted on about the sufficient airflow near where the swimmers are breathing. The next one is the one in green here. So the green guy here is what we would actually be voting on now. And so this one is where a source capture exhaust system is provided. The air handling system shall be designed to help move the air on the water surface towards the exhaust. This exhaust air should not be allowed to mix with any return airflow in the air handling system. I.e., if it's meant to be exhausted, it needs to be exhausted and not mixed in. The TSC agreed that it had merit in principle. However, they were wondering where the scientific documentation is. Yeah, they're not sure that this is really necessary. I think it's a good idea, personally. So I'd recommend yes. So any comments?
It seems to make sense, not only for like disinfection byproducts, but for, Legionella and things like that, you wouldn't be mixing air that you've been taking right from where people are breathing and recirculating it back through the air handling system.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments? Is anybody opposed to this? Nope, I'll give it unanimous yes. 462781-0004. This is the next little sub-bullet, so it's the one that's in green and red here. Air velocities shall not exceed 30 feet per minute, so as not to increase the evaporation rate and dehumidification requirement, unless adjustments are made to the evaporation rate as stated in section 46271. So this is referring back to that 30 feet per minute thing, and the reason for the 30 feet per minute is because that's the way it is in the ASHRAE standard of you change your calculations if you're above 30. The TSC agreed that it had merit in principle, but they need documentation for the 30 feet per minute, and the documentation is right there in the ASHRAE standard. Sorry, the ASHRAE handbook. So any comments? Okay, is anybody opposed to this change request? Okay, I'll give that a unanimous yes for a provisional. And then next one, 46279-0001. Just some rewording, reentrainment of exhaust and contaminants. They're just adding the word contaminants in there. air handling system, outdoor air intake shall be located instead of placed. So instead of minimizing, they're going to avoid re-entrainment of exhaust air and contaminants from the building, and including air handling system exhaust. So it's just some clarification and some rewording. And the TSC voted yes on this, just editorial changes. This probably actually could have been a email ballot. Sorry about that. Does any comments? Anybody opposed to this change request? Give that unanimous yes. Next one down. This is another one. In retrospect, I apologize. This should have just been a email ballot. Just changing the date on the ASHRAE standard from 2013 to 2019. Anybody opposed? I'll give that unanimous yes. Then 462711.2-0001. This is a big one. This is outdoor air required for a purge. Originally, the MAC said that it shall not be required to be heated or otherwise treated. But if you're purging air and if the air from the outside is really cold, you're going to get tons of condensation then on your system. And so the Indoor Air Quality Committee said, no, well, this can't be. We need to put a requirement in here that you do actually heat it. There was some discussion back and forth email before the meeting to talk about, well, does it have to be treated to, be just like the air that's in the rest of the facility, or is there a little bit of leeway there? And so the change request was changed to provide some leeway. So this is the new version that's down here that I just highlighted in gray. And so this is the one that we would be discussing, and it gives a little bit more leeway. So if a system is designed with 100% purge mode, the outdoor air delivered during a purge in winter shall be heated to a temperature established by the HVAC design engineer to address any condensation issues. So it's not like it has to be exactly like the rest of the air in the facility, but something needs to be done to prevent condensation. My only change after this, after we had these discussions with the authors, was that I'm not sure that just in winter, because they're thinking outdoor cold air coming in, but if in Alabama or wherever and it's really high humidity and you have an air conditioning system and this high humidity air comes in, you might get condensation too. So I might want to take the words in winter out, but I'm not an HVAC expert, so I'm not sure that's actually necessary. Anyway, so I think that was all the comments I wanted to say. Oh no, sorry, the TSC, they said, well, could there be exceptions or qualifiers for when it doesn't need to be heated? And so that's why, yeah, this kind of qualifying text was rewritten to provide a little more leeway there. And so I think we addressed the TSC's comments.
So if there's a minimum that's being established by the design engineer, shouldn't it just be that if the outdoor air, or the, it shouldn't matter if it's in winter or whenever, right? It should just be that it always has to be heated to whatever the minimum temperature is.
Yeah, I think so. Do you think we should remove in winter and just leave it without a seasonal requirement?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that might be like an annex discussion, how, this might be necessary more in cold weather during the winter, but it seems like, if it needs to be heated during certain times to address condensation, then, I don't want to limit that to winter, especially with the wonky weather we've had.
Any other comments?
This is Cindy. I wouldn't vote for it how it is written. That's for sure.
But with the new version, would you vote for it?
Taking out winter.
Yeah, the one that's in gray here.
I wouldn't vote for it if it left in winter in there.
Okay, but if we take winter out,
What if it's the other way around? What if it has to be cooled?
oh, how about conditioned to a temperature instead of heated?
Yeah, I'm
Is
not sure.
conditioned the word? Yeah. Oh shoot, I forgot to put track changes back on again. Is conditioned the word, or would it be a different word?
I don't know.
Condition seems like a good word, but it would apply to temperature and humidity, not just temperature.
It could just be heated or cooled to a temperature, you know, as needed to a temperature. I don't know.
That's better. So Cindy, does that address your concerns?
Yeah, but I agree with the humidity part too. So what does that do? We still could be imbalanced, right?
Yeah.
That's the hard part about adding outdoor air. It's into an indoor condition.
So conditions might be better then because it was cooling and dehumidification.
Well, we also would say to a temperature and humidity established by the HVAC design engineer, right? Would we have to say that if we're going to be treating it?
I have no idea. I mean, it gets to all the factors, right? Dew point, humidity, temperature. There's a lot of things that factor in because you're trying to prevent the condensation from happening when you're adding this purge air, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should table this one to another call with those other ones.
I just don't think it's worded right for the vote.
Okay, we'll table it. And we've got 1 minute left. Do you think we can do one more? 46281. This is a little complicated. Maybe we should hold off. I don't think we can get this done in 1 minute. Oh, that's not that complicated. I don't know. What do you guys want to do? You want to try to get one more in?
I mean, we're going to have to vote. We have another one after that, and then we have the one that's all the changes, and then 3 other related ones. So why don't we just table these to the next call?
Okay.
And then hopefully we can just kind of wrap this up really quickly and try to get everyone else's provisional votes. And we can readdress, maybe I'll put it on the call for 2 weeks from now. We can also readdress the few that we were just tabling before and just wrap this up hopefully pretty quickly on a future call.
I hope so. This is our second call already. I was really hoping we could get through them today.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could try to do it over email too, but I don't know how substantive these are. You know, if we can get a good discussion going, we might be able to do the remainder over email.
You know, this one's not that substantive. And this one is just about the written statements. And then we get into the ones from the other authors. I'd be tempted to do email ballot for the rest of these.
Why don't we do that then, and then we can incorporate the ones that we wanted to revisit and get some more discussion going on those.
Okay.
But I'll try to get vote or we'll try to have these, I think, let's see, about 5 that we got provisional votes on, so we can try to get those wrapped up, just with me sending a call summary out, and then we'll do a separate email agenda for the last handful and the ones that we've deferred. I think we had 3 deferred, and then we have 3 we haven't addressed or so, and then the other 3 that weren't the committees. So yeah, let's do that. So thanks everyone for the extra time today. I think we've had even more people drop off. Again, I'll send out a call summary, updated agenda, the email agenda voting list, and a new email agenda. I'll send those out Wednesday so we can keep trying to move along with those. And Ellen, I can talk to you about how we want to best do this, the rest of this for an email agenda separately, because it seems like it should be a pretty quick, that we can wrap it up.
Yeah, now that we've been through all these
you
other air quality ones, I think we can do it. Like before, I didn't think we could do them via email, but now that we've been through all these others, I think maybe we can.
Okay, great.
Amanda,
do you have any last notes?
Yeah, I got a question. This is Cindy. Amanda, we had one series that you took, mine, and I think some of Joe's or somebody else's, and we were comparing the code, applicable code stuff that went out in an email, but you and I were the only ones that commented on it, but then it never went to vote. So do I need to backtrack with you that list?
Yeah, I think a good number of those were on the email agenda from the 24th, but not all of them. So if they're still on a call agenda, then they haven't been discussed.
Okay.
But I think a bunch of them were part of, and we don't have the votes back in yet from that, but we should soon, so.
Okay. I just need to backtrack, I think, and figure out where they all went.
Yeah, and maybe we can try to do some of those on email too, but I think I put them on a later call agenda.
Okay. All right. All right. Thanks.
I just have one thing real quick, and I'm always going to defer to y'all's expertise, right? We are getting really, really close to a point where we cannot improve any more CRs. We have a few weeks left in the process. I fully understand the desire to improve everything that has some deficiencies, but we're getting to the point, folks, where the CRs will have to stand on their own. We still have an awful lot to cover. Y'all are doing a stellar job, but part of my role is keeping everyone aware of the time frame. So just please keep that in mind, as we look at the CRs coming up on the docket, and whatever revisions may need to be made. We are running out of time.
Okay, so thanks everyone again for staying late, and we'll talk more over email this week. I'll try to get a call summary out, and we'll just keep moving forward and try to get some CRs addressed by email before our next call on the 13th. So thanks everyone.
Thanks you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.